Look beyond the surface. See what is real in yourself and others.
You cannot see.
You think I cannot see?
Of all things, to live in darkness must be the worst.
Fear is the only darkness.
Welcome and thank you for tuning in. This is the first edition of The Truth Warrior here on American Freedom Radio. And my name is David Whitehead and I am your host. And I must say that it is truly an honor to be here with you tonight and to be here doing this show with you. And before we get things started tonight and I bring on tonight's guest, who I'm very excited about, I must say, I just wanted it to be known, my intention with the show. And my intention with doing these shows is really just to attempt to uncover the lies and misinformation that so we can, come to know what's true. And I feel that that's really the most valuable process that we can take and the best road that we can take in these times where we've got all kinds of information, disinformation, and everything in between traveling around at this time. And I feel that the only way that we can really get to know what's true is if we first get rid of what's untrue. And so there's different ways that I'm looking at, different angles that I want to bring to your attention. But the best way that I feel that I can do that is to bring on the great teachers and the great scholars and researchers that are out there that we do have access to, that are willing to come on this show and to be disseminators of truth and to bring their wisdom and their knowledge to us. And so I'm very, very excited to be a part of that process. And I just really want to get into all of the different things that are going on this planet to try to understand the big questions of who we are, where we come from, where we're going, why the world is the way it is, what we can maybe do about it and bring forward some, viable solutions to these things. And to ultimately understand that in the truest sense, it's going to take a warrior mentality, a warrior for truth that is going to basically be able to win this and to get through this and to ask these big questions and to go on this great adventure and to uncover these things. So that being said, I want to bring on tonight's guest, and he's the first guest here on the Truth Warrior. And to me, it's no coincidence because this great man was one of my first teachers on these subjects. He's been a huge influence on me personally through his excellent work over the years that I've been following him. I know that he's affected many, and I must say that it's a huge honor to bring on the one and only Jordan Maxwell. So without further ado, Jordan, are you there with us tonight, sir?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me on. Very nice of you.
Oh, well, it's very nice of you, Jordan, to come on and to accept this offer, to sort of kick off this show. And I just think that, there are no coincidences. And for me personally, like I said, I've been a student of yours, whether you knew it or not. I've been following your work for a long time. And I definitely want to hear what you have to say. And I think that your words and your research are needed in this time now. And I can only speak on behalf of some people in the younger generation that I'm surrounded with, that people are more curious and they really want to know the truth and they really want to get into the deeper aspects of this stuff. And so I'm very excited to have you on tonight, and I really want to get into this rabbit hole, this situation that we're experiencing. If we could maybe just get started tonight with, maybe I know a lot of people definitely know your work, so maybe we can get right into some things here and just maybe start with how your journey started with uncovering some of the darker aspects of what's going on, because I think people, they really always want to hear all the nice, flowery information and the stuff that sounds good. And but unfortunately, you've said it many times that we really have to go back and do our homework. We really have to look at what's true, not necessarily what we want to be true. And maybe we can kind of get started with that as a way to start this show tonight.
Yeah, well, it is. It's always been the case that I think it was Napoleon that said history is a bunch of lies that we've all agreed upon. And I kind of like that because it's true. I mean, the ideas and concepts that we live by in this world are things which we generally understand, no matter what language you're in. In the Western world, English-speaking world, there are certain concepts and ideas, law and government, education and the police and government. Like I said, just the normal things that we have to live with in the Western world. I'm not talking about the ancient East, but in the world that we live in, there are words and terms and symbols and institutions and logos and things which we got used to a long time ago, and no one seems to have questioned, where all this stuff came from. And so that's what I've tried to do a long time ago, was to draw people's attention back to the ancient, back to the old ancient world, where and then begin to see where all of our ideas and concepts have come from law and banking and insurance companies and churches and religion and synagogues and mosques, and oh my God knows, it's just enormous amounts of things which are prevalent in our society that people take for granted. No one seems to have ever looked at where these ideas have come from. So that's what I'm trying to do, is just awaken my fellow man to look at the world in a totally different way. For the first time, look at the world the way it actually, in fact, works, not the way you thought it did. Because I've said this so many times, nothing in this world is what you think it is. Nothing is, I used to hear this when I was a kid. I've heard this over and over, that the world is run by smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
And I used to wonder about that. What are you talking about, smoke and mirrors? I don't see any smoke, and I'm not looking at any mirrors. Well, now that I'm older and understand the concept, it's true. The whole world is smoke and mirrors, meaning smoke, you cannot see things through very clearly. You can see something, but if it's a lot of smoke, you really can't make it out very clearly. And a mirror simply gives back to you what you put into it. It gives back to you. So computers are like a mirror. Whatever you type into a computer is what it's going to give you back. And so when I hear people saying on the news at night, well, the election was so close, this is not numbers, and the computers are telling us that it's this and that, I'm thinking, well, of course the computers will tell you whatever it is you put into it. Whatever you put in, that's what the computer will tell you. So somebody's putting in those numbers so that it will be spit back out, and therefore it's the computer, decided who won, and that's it. So it's very simple. I type it in, and I decide who's going to win. I type it in, and that's what the computer says, and that's it. Drop it. And so that's the way the world works, is that we operate on the accepting words and terms and symbols, and never suspecting that there are people behind the technology, who agenda, and they are leading you along. They're continually telling you things that you think are true, and they're not. They're lying to you. And so that's why we end up where we are today. We're in trouble financially and politically and sociologically and every other way. We're just in trouble because we've been fed lies from day one, and nothing is what you think it is.
Absolutely. And if I've been a student of history for a while, and I've always looked back and just realized that no matter what page in history you turn to, you see nothing but, corruption and lies and, manipulation of the general masses, right? And what's different than what's happening today?
That's exactly right. There is no difference. The more we change, the more we stay the same. We're still buying into the same old ideas and concepts that go back thousands of years. And, you would think that by now we would have learned our lesson and moved on to something better, but we still get stuck accepting the old ancient pagantries, the old ancient ideas. And not everything that's old is bad, but we keep all the old bad stuff. We don't take any of the good stuff that was known by the ancient peoples, like the architecture and the understanding of the universe and astronomy and astrology, etc., that the ancient peoples knew that was very important. We don't keep that because the church has told us that all that ancient architecture and Egypt was all a bunch of pagans, and the astrology and astrological understandings of the ancient and prehistoric world was all a bunch of bull. So we don't need to think about that. When in point of fact, the whole entire superstructure of Western civilization, its laws, its government, its financing, the whole entire world that we live in is based on astrology. But happily, the church has taught everybody not to look there. Don't have anything to do with it. It's all of the devil. And therefore, you don't look into what the church has known for centuries. They didn't tell you. And so, when I look at the word God, and the English word God is dog spelled backwards, and devil is simply putting a D, the letter D, in front of the word evil, and becomes devil. And so, God is good, and the devil is evil. And you take, and from the root word God, you get the word good, G-O-O-D. You take an O out of good, and it becomes God. God is good. Devil is evil. And so that's the way we leave it. No one's ever questioned, what are you talking about when you use the term God? I remember a professor of mine many years ago, back in the 70s, made that point clear. He said, anytime you're discussing philosophy or any important subject, always define your terms. Because when you talk about God or government or banking or finance or whatever, religion, what do you mean by that word, as opposed to what I think the word means? So you need to, define your terms and find out where your ideas have come from. Most people don't realize that the ideas that they espouse every day and that they live by were dreamt up by somebody else 5,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago. And today you're still talking and using the same ideas and same concepts and not realizing, who was it that started this idea? Where did it come from? And what was the basis of it? So that's what I've been trying to do all of my life. I've been talking about these things for about 40 years, 45 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of wore out and tired trying to tell people to wake up and look at where things come from. All you have to do is just go into the library and read. Do some research on symbols and words and terms and catchphrases and legalese and what do words mean in law. Because the bottom line is nothing, as I just said, nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing. Insurance companies don't do what you think they do. Banks don't do what you think they do. The police department is not here to do what you think it does. Government is not based on what you think it is. Commerce, life, marriage, life is not what you think it is. It's totally different, but it's been hidden from you. And the word is occult. O-C-C-U-L-T. Occult simply means hidden. Nothing evil or bad, just hidden. And so all the things that government and the church and commerce does not want you to know what they're doing, they will tell you those subjects which we are involved in, which we're doing, and we're working with, are subjects that we're not interested for you to know. And so we call them occult subjects, and that means they're evil and bad and have nothing to do with it, like astrology and like banking. Those are occult subjects, and we don't know anything about it. Well, in point of fact, it's very simple. All you got to do is a little homework and find out where these ideas have come from, and then you can start unravel life for the first time and find out how much you really didn't know. That's what I try and do to help people.
Well, and you've definitely helped me personally, Jordan, and I plan on doing what I can to help continue to at least get people to start asking these questions. And you were bringing up a good point with just how this has happened throughout history, how these subjects have become occulted, and how we have lost the understanding of these words, terms, and symbols, etc. And even the English language. I mean, when you take something out of the Egyptian hieroglyphics, or you take something out of any of these ancient languages, it's such a rough translation, and it leads to a lot of confusion, especially here in the West, where we use English. And you take something like the Bible that was translated into by King James, and it was and many others, and mistranslated and then retranslated. And I mean, how many translations do we got floating around? And now we have like 60,000 different denominations within that particular sect.
Yeah.
And you can say the same thing with these other religions. So language itself also has a lot of occult matters as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. And English, I don't know if you know this or not, but English is a design language. English was actually well thought out and designed in its very, very beginnings. And that's something a lot of people don't know. It wasn't just developed over time. No, it was developed according to an agenda. English is a very interesting language, and it's referred to as Low German. It's a Germanic language, Low German, but it was a design language, and the whole idea behind English, being a designer language, was to design a language which puts you in a particular frame of mind.
Absolutely. Well,
look
sorry to cut you off there, Jordan. We got the break coming on, so let's hold that thought. We'll continue on the other side. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're here. This is The Truth Warrior. We're talking to Jordan Maxwell, and we'll be back in a few short minutes. Don't go anywhere. We're here with Jordan Maxwell. You're listening to Truth Warrior, and I'm your host, David Whitehead. And Jordan, just before the break, we were getting into an extremely interesting subject about language and about the origins of the English language, and how you were just getting into how it was actually something that was designed specifically. Now, do you think that was something that was designed, again, to, I guess, lead us astray from being able to actually completely and fully understand some of these greater concepts that came out of the ancient world?
Well, I think it was probably more to provide for Western civilization, Christianity and Western civilization, a frame of reference, I would say, a frame of reference that would articulate life for us in a different frame of reference from the ancient East. The Chinese and the Orientals look at things different, and they use words and terms and ideas that are totally different from us in the Western world. They have different philosophies and different ideas about things that we do in our civilization. And so I think English was designed to give us a frame of reference that was probably aiming at becoming more accurate for the common people to understand things, because the way we understand and explain things is much easier than in the ancient and the Eastern world. But you just go on the web and go to a library and just do some research on the origins of the English language. And in relation to that, one of the most important publications I've ever come across in the library is something called the Oxford Dictionary of the English Language. It's a multi-volume set. I think about 23, 24 volumes, big ones. They have smaller ones, of course. They have plenty of little small Oxford dictionaries. No, I'm talking about the 24 volume or 27 volume, and they're big, huge volumes. It's called the Oxford Dictionary of the English Language, and that volume of set is absolutely priceless because it'll take one word and spend like 2 pages or 3 pages on that one word, showing you where it actually originated in the ancient world, how it was pronounced, what it meant 5,000 years ago, what it meant 1,000 years ago, and how it's spelled 500 years ago. And it just traces the origin all the way back to day one for every word in the English language. And it's phenomenal, because when you start using terms and words, go back and look at where those words came from. And then you begin to see how they've been misused and why it's evolved and been mistranslated and misunderstood. I mean, I've always said the very word understanding means to stand under the subject, to get understanding. So you stand under a subject. You don't look at the house when you're buying it. Look at what it's built on. Look at the foundation. See if it's on an earthquake fault. Or if you're going to build and put a lot of weight on the second floor of a building, go downstairs first and go on a ladder and go up to the ceiling tiles and see if the foundation for the second floor is going to hold the kind of weight you're going to put on it. So what you're doing is you're standing under the foundation you're going to build on to get understanding. So when you break down words and begin to see where these words have come from and the ideas, then things begin to make a lot more sense to you for the first time. And a lot of ancient concepts have been couched in, I guess you would say, new words and terms that have come into use in the last 300 years. and a lot of misunderstanding. A classic example of what I'm talking about is in religion and in theology. My God, there's so much that today's modern-day Christianity, which incidentally, when I say modern-day Christianity, I'm not talking about the original Christianity 2,000 years ago. I'm not talking about that. There's a world of difference, a major world of difference between what first-century Christianity taught and understood as opposed to what Christianity today is. There is not even a semblance of order in today's religion that we call Christianity that makes any sense compared to what it was in the first century. So I'm just saying that first century Christianity was one thing. What we have today is a monstrosity. There's no understanding where all of this nonsense has come from. We know that, for instance, I'll give you an example of what I'm saying about first century Christianity having nothing to do with modern day Christianity at all. And that is one of the oldest, probably the oldest Christian church ever found on the earth was found a couple of years ago in Jerusalem, or in Israel, I should say. And it was in the area of Megiddo, I think. And there was a big articles in the paper, it was on the news, that the oldest Christian church ever found on the earth, going back to about the 1st or 2nd century, was found when they were digging for a new foundation in a prison. They were digging a new foundation for a building, and they hit a floor, finding out it was a Christian church. And so they pulled it all up, dug it all out, cleaned it up, and on the floor of the Christian church was the symbol for Pisces, the two fish of the zodiac. And all around it were the zodiological symbols of the zodiac. Well, I know, because of studying theology for some 53 years, I'm aware that what we call today Christianity is actually Astro-Theology. It's based on the sun worship. This is why Christians go to church on Sunday. While the Hebrews, one of the main gods of the Hebrew religion, was the planet Saturn, the god Saturn. This is why they honor their god on Friday night at 6 o'clock. They have something called a Sabbath, and Jews have a Sabbath which starts at 6 o'clock on Friday night to 6 o'clock on Saturday evening. Is a Jewish day. So in the old ancient Jewish system, from 6 in the evening to 6 in the evening the next day was the Jewish day. Why? It's because that goes back to Moses, because Moses was the leader of a lunar cult, and so the Jewish religion has got a lot of the old lunar moon worship in it today. And they have Saturn worship in it, moon worship in it. They have some sun worship also, and also they have some in Judaism. There's a lot of Jupiter worship also, but it's all been well hidden. But for Jews who keep the Sabbath, the word Sabbath comes from a word for the planet Saturn. Saturn was called in the ancient language, Saturn was Shabbat, Shabbath, Shabbat. And so Shabbat, as I said, was a word for Saturn. Saturn was Shabbat. And so if you're going to worship your god Saturn, then what better time to do it will be on Saturn's day, or a Saturday. Saturn's day, and so they called it Sabbath. No, not Sabbath, Shabbat. Well, today we call it Sabbath. And so today Christians and Jews talk about keeping the holy Sabbath. There's nothing holy about Sabbath. It's the worship of Saturn, Shabbat. And so that's why the Jews worship their god, Saturn, on Saturn's day, or Saturday. And the Christians who are worshiping the sun worship their God on Sunday. And of course, Jesus is referred to as God's Son, the light of the world. Well, of course, the sun is the light of the world. And he's your risen Savior. Well, of course, it's your risen Savior. If the sun don't come up, we're dead in 3 weeks. And so it is a risen Savior. Rises every morning about 5:30, so it is your risen Savior. And so once you start breaking down these terms and ideas and where they've come from, I was talking about the Jewish religion, why their days start at 6:30 in the evening, after 6. It's because that's when the moon comes out. In the old ancient world, in the Middle East, and especially in Egypt and the Sinai, in the Sinai Peninsula, there's a huge high mountain range in the middle of the Sinai, and from the Egyptian side of the Sinai, at night the moon comes up in the east, and so the people from Egypt and that side of the Sinai at night, they would see the moon come up from behind the mountain range. So the moon became known as, and you can look it up in the dictionary, the old man of the mountain. He was referred to as the old man of the mountain, or the moon. And his official name in the ancient world was Sin, S-I-N. Sin was the name of the moon god, the old man who lived in the mountain. And we know he lived in the mountain because every night you look east and he comes up from the east, and he comes up behind the mountain. So the ancient peoples believed the moon lived in the mountain, and he was an ancient god, and every night he'd come out after 6. So Moses was the leader of the lunar cult, the moon worshippers. And so, even today, the Jews still worship their God after sundown. The moon comes out after sundown. And Saturn was the god, the inhibitor. Saturn was referred to as the inhibitor, the one who holds you back. It inhibits your free movement. And so anything that was Saturnian was like the police, the authorities, the government, institutions. You know, in any institution which had the power to hold you, lock you up, to put you in jail, to hold you back, is called Saturnian. Well, of course, the police and the fire department and the administration of government, that's Saturnian, Saturn. That's why you have so many Jews who are lawyers and judges in government, because it's a Saturnian system that we live under. So, like I said, so when you begin looking at religion and then understanding that religion is the basis for government, our government is based on religion. And, you know, we in America, we like to think that there's a division between church and state. In point of fact, there is no division at all. I think we need a division, but there isn't one. There is no division between church and state in America. Supposedly one, you know, that's what we wanted, but that's not what's happening. So much of the Jewish religion dominates our courts. Three things, the three foundations of Western civilization is governmental systems is based on Rome. America, the governmental system, is a Roman system. So that goes back to Rome, the Vatican. The philosophies, our spiritual and intellectual philosophies, go back to Greece. So that's Greek philosophy. And our laws, all of our laws, period, commercial and all the other laws, civil laws, all go back to the Jews. It all goes back to the Old Testament and to the Torah. And so in the Western world, our laws are Jewish, our philosophies and ideas are Greek, and our very government is Roman. So we're one big bunch of pagans, and but we made it all work. We put it together. The Vatican runs government, and it's an incredible story about how all of this stuff has evolved and mutated and evolved over the centuries into what we have today. And what we have today is a hodgepodge of ancient pagan religions dominating the landscape, and unfortunately, we humans, we don't know much about any of it. We just go along to get along and watch television, and then we get all upset and bent out of shape whenever we get in trouble with the taxes and jail or the courts and finances and all the problems that comes with life. Well, if you understood where all of these things came from, you know, you would understand what not to do, and where these ideas have developed. Banks don't do what you think they do. I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a law in this country, in America, that says banks cannot loan money ever. So there is no such a thing as a bank loan in America, period. I don't know if you know that or not, but you can't borrow money from a bank, period.
Yeah, they basically print it off, and they print it off at interest, and it's basically completely fictitious, right?
Yeah, it's just paper. It has not money at all. But the point I'm making is that suppose I go into a bank with $100,000, and I put $100,000 into the bank on Friday. You go in Monday and borrow $100,000 to buy a boat or a plane. So they're going to give you my $100,000 that I put in on Friday. They're giving it to you Monday to buy your plane. No. Nobody's giving my money to you to buy your plane. My money is safe, and you know how are they going to give you $100,000? Well, they're certainly not going to give you my money.
No, most definitely, most definitely. Well, we got another break coming up, Jordan. So let's continue on the other side. So, folks, you're listening to Truth Warrior. We're here with Jordan Maxwell, and we're going to get into some fascinating subjects on the other side. So stay put. Be back in a few short minutes. And welcome back, folks. You're listening to American Freedom Radio, and this is Truth Warrior, and I'm your host, David Whitehead. And we're talking tonight with the one and only Jordan Maxwell, and we were just breaking down a few different subjects there. And I just want to let people know that Jordan was just grazing those subjects. You can get a wealth of knowledge from going and taking a look at his work online, and like he said, go down to the library and get those different resources and start doing some research on these subjects. There's each subject in its own is just a vast wealth of knowledge just waiting to be discovered. So definitely follow up on those things. And Jordan, I really wanted to maybe if we take where we started here, and we've talked a little bit about religion and politics and banking and how these different things are presented to us in a specific way, but then of course we're getting the wrong end of it and we're completely not understanding it. And it's because of the fact that those in power, as they've always throughout history, and the same is true to this day, they wish to remain hidden, and they wish to obviously keep their power. And I think that they know that if we were truly turned on to what the truth was, and if we truly knew who we were, where we came from, and we weren't constantly being fed all these lies and disinformation, that we wouldn't quite be as easy to keep under control. And maybe we can start... Yeah, maybe we can start talking about that a little bit, and some of the powers that run the religious institutions and the banks and the governments, etc.
Well, in the Western world, the Vatican is behind just about all of this stuff. The Jesuits and the Jesuits are a military order operating within the Vatican, within the confined Catholic establishment on the earth. But the Jesuits are a military order. And this is why you have something called Jesuit missions. And the western part of the United States, we have in Arizona, New Mexico, and California, we have something called California missions. And they're churches, they are Catholic churches. And so these, and we see even today Mormons and go out on their mission. And so Christian missionaries, mission and missionaries, the very word mission, if you look it up in a law dictionary, will tell you that the word mission is a military term. It is not religious. It has nothing to do with theology. It is a military term. It's used in wartime. So your mission is in wartime. And so when you see a Catholic mission, it's actually it's a military term. The Catholic Church is actually a military movement moving into America from Rome. And so what the founding fathers were running away from, to get away from the Vatican, to get away from the Roman Empire, to get away from Caesar, Tiberius Caesar, and the emperors and all the slavery that went on in the Holy Roman Empire. Europeans were trying to get away from all of that tyranny of the Vatican, of the Caesar, of Rome. And so they came to a new land to have religious freedom, to have freedom so we could breathe free air, not have to be crawling on our knees to the Holy Father and to Queen Mum as they ride around in their gold chariots, flipping their cigarette butts on our children. And so that's why America was founded, to give us freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to speak our mind, and hopefully to develop a whole new world. And that's what Thomas Paine, one of the most important of the founding fathers, most people have never heard of, he was without a doubt one of the most important people who helped found America, was Thomas Paine. And Thomas Paine said, with the founding of America, the United States of America, we have the opportunity to completely reform the world. For the first time, we're going to actually have a country which guarantees every single person the right to be free, worship whatever they wish, do whatever they wish, think whatever, and speak their mind, and be totally free from the Vatican, from the Holy Father, from the Inquisition, from the tribunals, all of those secret societies that were, in the courts and all that stuff of Europe. And so we founded a country based on freedom and liberty and justice, but unhappily, that didn't last. And so now we're back on our knees again to the Holy Father. We're back on our knees again to Rome and European banks. European banks operate under the Vatican canon law. So when you trace your regular bank in your hometown, your bank is merely part of a banking system. And that banking system is based on the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is based on the British Maritime Admiralty law, the British commercial law, which is the basis for your American banking system, is actually based on European law and banking. And European law and banking, of course, goes back to Europe, goes back to Rome, Caesar. And so ultimately, people who study this kind of thing for a living, people who study it, know that our banking system, our government, the way we live all goes back to Europe, and whatever's Europe all goes back to Rome. So that's why we got the old saying that all roads lead to Rome. It's true. Government, banking, commerce, entertainment, all of it leads back to Rome. So we have, Caesar in the ancient Roman Empire ruled Rome from something called Capitol Hill. In point of fact, that's true. You will find that in the ancient Roman Empire, the Caesars of Rome ruled, their seat of power was on a hill in Rome called Capitoline Hill, or Capitol Hill. And I've read in reference works on American history that that the Caesars ruled from Capitol Hill, and that's why today we have in America and Washington, D.C., something called Capitol Hill, because that's where Caesar ruled from. And so when you see George Bush bowing down, kneeling down, and kissing the ring of the Holy Father, I don't know what that tells you. In America, an American president, the land of the free and the home of the brave, well, we got Bush was bowing down on his knees and kissing the ring of a foreign emperor. I don't know what that tells me.
Absolutely.
Something. You didn't see the Pope bowing down and kissing his ring. And so that's why today, all over the world, communists, Nazis, fascists, murderers, all the degenerates who are running the world, the power-hungry, mad Caligulars of the world, they all have to go to Rome, ultimately, and go on your knees and kiss the Pope's ring, because if you're going to be in politics or religion or government or do anything in the Western world, you better go back and pay your respects and pay your dues to the Holy Father of Rome. Because after all, Rome rules Europe. Rome has dominated Europe for 2,300 years. The Vatican has dominated Europe for 1,600 of those 2,300 years. And so since Caesar and the Roman Empire dominated Europe for 2,300 years, well, Europe has dominated the earth for 2,300 years. Again, all the wars, the violence, the bloodshed, the banking, the drug trafficking, the slavery, the conceptual ideas of military might, military armies, all of that goes back to the Roman Empire. And I think, the lawyer for the guy in Godfather 1, when the lawyer went to the prison to talk with one of the mafiosi gangsters, he says in the movie, the world we live in is just the Roman Empire replayed. It's just like the Roman Empire. Our gangs, the mafia, and organized crime, because that's all the Vatican was, is organized crime. And, God knows how many people the Vatican has put to death. They used to burn people at the stake because you didn't look right. You didn't go to a particular church, so they would burn you at the stake, murder your children. And so that's why I said, the Founding Fathers wanted to get away from all of that and came to America. Well, unfortunately, it didn't work because the people are not very vigilant. Vigilance is the price of freedom. So freedom was not really very important to people. As long as they have enough to eat, and alcohol and drugs and entertainment and basketball, and as long as their bellies are filled and they're amused, they don't really care about what government does or who's in power. They don't even vote. Nobody cares anyway. So, unfortunately, America, has lost her way. She's lost her freedom. She's lost her way. She's lost her morality, her ethics, her scruples. She's lost her jobs. She's lost her homes. And now the only thing left for America to lose is its mind. And we see that every day in the news. People jumping off of bridges and killing 15 people in a restaurant. And all the craziness and all the unbelievable violence.
Well, most definitely, Jordan. While we're getting cut off by the music there, we're at the top of the hour, so let's continue on the other side. We've got hour 2 coming up. Folks, you're listening to Truth Warrior here on American Freedom Radio. We're here with Jordan Maxwell, so sit tight. We'll be right back. Everybody, you're listening to Truth Warrior here on American Freedom Radio, and my name is David Whitehead, your host, and tonight we're talking to Jordan Maxwell. And then just before we continue, I just want to point out something about the reason why I chose that term warrior to be in the title of this show, and that is that, in my definition, the warrior is one who has first of all, a survival instinct and recognizes danger, has an awareness of their surroundings. And that doesn't just mean, your physical surroundings, but that's also about having an awareness of what's going on within your own mind. And it relates to that old quote that, if you don't control your own mind, someone else will. The warrior recognizes that there is danger, but that fear is actually just a choice. And what we need to do is face those things that would maybe turn us away. And we need to confront it in order to be able to deal with it. And another thing about the warrior and the warrior tradition that I've always admired was, the ability to see danger and to stand up for those that might not quite be at that point, that might not be able to defend themselves. And in our modern day, we're not fighting necessarily a physical battle. This is a spiritual battle. This is a information war. This is a war over your consciousness, over your mind, and what you're going to put your energy into and what you're not. So that's really what the essence of this show is all about. And we're here, in my opinion, with definitely one of the greatest warriors that we have fighting this battle, and that is Jordan Maxwell. And Jordan, I just wanted to also point out that in the Japanese tradition, the word sensei, which mostly just means teacher, but it means one who has gone before. And there's 3 tenets to what it means to be a sensei, and that is teacher, scholar, and warrior. And I really feel honestly that you embody all of those qualities. And I definitely have learned a lot from you, and I'm learning even a lot in this conversation. So I want to once again thank you for coming on, and look forward to this second hour. We can peel back these layers even more.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and believe me, when you're dealing with these kinds of subjects, you're going to pay a dear price. And I would warn everyone, when you begin to awaken to the real world that you live in, and you want to start really delving deep into the real world and how it really works, I would warn you by saying that you will pay a terrible price to uncover the darkness. It can be very, very costly to you. You may lose your family. You may lose your life. It's very, very dangerous to uncover darkness today, because they're, and by saying that is based on the fact that when I'm viewing this darkness, I've been looking at this stuff for 53 years, while most of my audience hasn't studied it for 53 minutes. And I know, I don't suspect, I know for a fact that there is what has come to be known as a demonic presence. I am totally convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is such a thing as a spirit world, a demonic world, a depraved world in the spirit world that affects us. It impacts our everyday life from areas that we don't know anything about. Government knows, but they're not saying too much, and churches, and especially the Vatican knows, but they're not saying anything. But there is a demonic spiritual presence in the earth today, and we see it because of bloodshed, violence, massive wars that kill and maim humans and children, and that cannot be anything of any good. No God would ever allow such a thing to happen to his children. So the mere fact that there are people on this planet who plan wars, who are, make millions and millions of dollars a day, and selling arms all over the world, selling machine guns and tanks and jets, armaments all over the world indiscriminately to anybody who's got the money can buy them. They're only interested in selling the arms. They don't give a damn what you do with them or who you use them on. They don't care. As long as you buy them from and give them the cash, they don't care.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a frightening world that we live in. And I like what Albert Einstein said about that. He said that the world is not only dangerous, it's a very dangerous place to live, but not only because bad people do bad things. No, the real reason why it's dangerous is that good people do nothing. Yeah. And so that basically is true. The normal, regular, everyday good people are not interested in running the universe. They're not interested in being Tiberius Caesar or Caligula. They're only interested in taking care of their families and having a happy life with their children, and they're not interested in being the dictator of the world. So the only kind of people that get into government, usually and especially now, there are one or two of exceptions to every rule. But generally speaking, the people who get into government or work their way up in corporations or banks and big corporations are people who are hungry for money and power and the lust for power to be able to drive the biggest Mercedes and stay at the best hotels and live the high life with money and political power and sex and drugs and all of it. And so that's the kind of people who end up in government. But what we don't realize is that we are now, we're not the same country that we were back in 1776. America's a different country now. We are no longer, America is no longer a constitutional republic. It's not a republic as such. America is a corporation. It's a company. And because it's a corporation, everyone who is a member of the corporation is equal under the laws of the corporation. We all live under this law. So it is called democracy. Democracy means rule of the mob or the masses. And so the masses of America are referred to as a democracy. We're not a republic. A republic is totally different than a democracy. And so when you understand the difference between these words and what they mean, then you can begin to understand what's going on in America and Canada and the Western world and where we're going, what's happening to us. But too many people are not aware of what these words mean. And I'll give you an example. A lot of people will not relate to what I'm going to say, and I don't really care if they understand. I don't care if people in the audience understand me. or if they believe me, or if they even care. I don't care. I'm just telling you what the truth is. I've been looking at it for a long time. And I'll just tell you what the bottom line on everything is very simply. In my opinion, the Republican Party, as we now know it today in America, is one half of the power is in the Republican Party. The Republican Party today is made up of the old line Nazis that came out of Berlin under Adolf Hitler, the old Nazi SS Gestapo, Operation Paperclip, Vatican, that's Vatican, Operation Paperclip, Nazis, the Nazi movement in Germany, Austria. Today, we call that same ancient Vatican Nazi movement the Republican Party. And so there are reference books. There are actually large reference books that talk about and explain how the Republican Party was actually taken over back in the mid to late 1940s when on the Operation Paperclip, the Vatican was quickly getting all the top German leaders out of Germany because they were losing the war, and Hitler knew the war was over and he was losing. And so the Vatican quickly got false passports for all the top Nazi generals, all the top Nazi scientists, all the cream of the crop of the Nazi Party were given safe haven, provided with money, safe passage, new passports, fake passports, fake ID, and were sent to Catholic-dominated countries. And everybody involved knew what was going on. The leaders of the countries like Uruguay, Paraguay, Mexico, Argentina, and Peru, all the political leaders, they all knew what was going on, that the Vatican was trying to save their Nazi empire that was facing the Russians coming in from the Eastern Front and the Allies coming in from the West, and Germany was going under, and the Nazi movement was being destroyed. And so, in order to save the Nazi movement, the Vatican provided safe passage, as I said, and money, finances, and false IDs and false passports, and to get the top Germans out of the way quickly, so that they could continue the Nazi movement somewhere else. Well, that whole story is referred to as the Operation Paperclip. Go to the web or any library, look up the word Operation Paperclip, and it will tell you how the Vatican had something called it the rat line, R-A-T-L-I-N-E, rat line. And the Vatican rat line was connected to Operation Paperclip. What that word rat line meant was that ships that are not seaworthy, the rats will leave it when it pulls into port. The rats come down the rope that's tying the ship off and get off the ship, because the rats are not stupid. They know the ship is going to sink. So they're getting off the ship. And so it was called the rat line, because these rats, these Nazi rats, realize that their ship is going under. They're losing. So they need to get out of town and get out quickly, because the Russians were coming and the Americans were coming. And so they had to get out of town quickly, so they went to the Vatican. And so the Vatican gave them false passports and money and got them out, so it's called the Vatican rat line. And over here we called it Operation Paperclip. So I'm just saying that today the Republican Party is the old German Nazi Vatican Operation Paperclip rat line under new auspices, under new decorations, and so we call it the Republican Party of America. Well, on the other hand, you have the Democratic Party, which the Democratic Party is the old socialist Soviet Union, Marxist-Leninist Soviet Union, Communist Party. And this is why all communist countries today, and have been for the last 50 years, 100 years, all communist countries are always referred to as the People's Democratic Republic. Democratic. Like the People's Democratic Republic of China, the People's Democratic Republic of Cuba, the People's Democratic Republic of North Korea, the People's Democratic Republic of Soviet Union. It's always the People's Democratic Republic. Democratic is a buzzword which simply means communism, collectivism, communism, Marxist-Leninist, Bolshevik communism. We call it democracy, the rule of the mob. And so that's where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a very good point, Jordan, because I think it's so important that people understand that the very seeds of what we're calling, the tree of our freedom here in America and in North America, and now turning into around the world, the very seed that were planted were rotten. And so if you plant these types of seeds in the ground, what do you expect to get? And it seems that these different organizations, this organized mafia crime syndicate, whatever you want to call it, has been expert at infiltrating movements that may have, even on a grassroots level, been started by virtuous people for virtuous ends.
That's right.
But then they infiltrate, they have their secret orders, their secret societies, their secret meetings. Did you want to get into how that kind of plays in as well? Because we have the political level, but then we also have this influence. Many, even politicians like Benjamin Disraeli and many others have talked about the power behind the throne.
Well, of course. I mean, there have been lots of presidents in the United States have talked about it. Woodrow Wilson said, if you're going to talk about the people who are running this planet, you better talk in a whisper. Don't let them hear you, because they'll do you in. That's what Woodrow Wilson, the president of the United States, said. You better talk under your breath if you're going to talk about the people who run America, because they're desperately evil. So if you're going to say anything about them, you better do it quietly. And so I know that this is, as I said, so this is the way it works. You cannot walk anywhere with one leg. You don't really see very well with one eye. In order to have three dimension, you have to have two eyes. You can't really detect sound very well with only one ear. And so you need two. It takes two to tango, so to speak. And so it takes two to do everything. So you're not going to be able to walk with one leg. You've got to have two legs. You can't do much of anything with one arm. You're going to have two arms. And so therefore you have to have two sides to cause things to happen. Now it's very difficult, if not impossible, to walk on a glass floor or a marble floor that has oil on it. So think about that. We'll talk about when I come back.
Yeah, definitely. There's the break, folks. So this is fascinating information. We're here with Jordan Maxwell. There's the break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in a few short minutes. And we're back, everybody. You're listening to American Freedom Radio, and this is Truth Warrior, and I'm your host, David Whitehead. And we're here talking to Jordan Maxwell. And Jordan, right before the break there, you were just breaking down the two-party system and how they always use two hands to keep people distracted into believing that they have some kind of a say in these different affairs within their various countries. So I wondered if you wanted to continue where we left off there.
Yeah, so that's why on the back of the American dollar bill, and that's why you will see on the presidential seal, which is on, when you look at the back of the dollar bill, on the right-hand side it's called the Great Seal of America. On the left-hand side you'll see the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. That's a whole different story. But on the right-hand side we'll see the eagle, the American eagle. The eagle only has two wings, a left wing and a right wing. That's why you have left-wing politics and right-wing politics. because an eagle only has two wings. But there's a brain in between the two wings that coordinates the two wings to work together so the beast can fly. And so you have left-wing politics, which is communist, Marxist-Leninist, Bolshevik, Soviet communist, democracy, as opposed to the other wing, which is the right wing. We even call it that, right-wing politics. And right wing is, of course, Vatican, Republican Party, Vatican, Nazi, SS, Gestapo, Operation Paperclip. And so in America, the choice is, do you want a communist, Marxist-Leninist communist, to run America like the Soviet Union? Because it worked so well in the Soviet Union that we really need to bring it to America. You know, that classic idea of Marxist communism. It worked so well that we should try it in America. Or do you want the Republican Party, which is George Bush and the bowing down, kissing the ring of the Pope? And so that's why we have left and right wing, because the eagle only has two wings. But when you get into it deeper, you begin to see how the symbolism is really interesting. It really gets to be powerful stuff you're dealing with. For instance, in Hollywood, I've said this before, but it bears repeating, that North America, actually came from Europe. And so Europe was the motherland from which America developed. Well, the European system of government from under the Roman Empire, even before Rome, there was already a governmental system among the white people of Europe. And that system of government was called the Druids. They were Celtic or Celtic Druids. And the Druids were the real, power establishment in Europe for thousands of years. And so that Druid society, they were the lawyers, they were the judges, they were the teachers, they were the religious leaders, the accountants. Anybody who was anybody in ancient Europe were Druids. And one of the most important symbols in the Druidic system was a magic wand, like Merlin the magician with his magic wand, or the orchestra leader, the great conductors of the orchestras have their magic wand. Well, magic wands were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It's made out of hollywood. And so the whole system in the Western world, especially in America, North America, is a Druidic system, Hollywood. That's why we even have something called Hollywood. And because the wood of the holly tree was sacred to the old Celtic Druids of the ancient Roman Empire. And they were the lawyers, they were the religious leaders. And so today, our legal system, our judicial system, our governmental and religious systems of churches, etc., are all based on the ancient Druidic system. And happily, nobody knows anything about that, and therefore nobody sees it. But that's what it is, and that's where we are. And so, once we see that, then you begin to understand, as I said before the break, it's very difficult to do anything if it's just one. You can't really go much. You can't do very much with one leg. So you have to have two. Well, the same is true also about walking on a smooth surface with oil on it. You're walking on a glass floor or marble floor and it's got a thin sheet of oil on it. It's going to be very difficult to walk. And the reason why is there's no friction. You have to have friction under the sole of the shoe to move you forward. Without friction, you're just going to slide around like on ice and oil, and you're not going anywhere. So you've got to have friction, and you've got to have 2 feet to do something. So we have the politics of the Republican and the Democrats, and you've got to have friction. And that's what that's the way the system works. So the idea was very simple. You create friction. You create wars. You create violence. You create things, and then the government has to come in and put it all down and bring back order. And so out of the chaos, you get a new order. Well, that's what Hitler did. Hitler sent out all of his troops to burn churches and burn places down, and then the people cried for somebody to do something about it. Well, then Hitler came in and said, well, the only way I can do anything about this, all this violence going on, is if you give me the power to do it. Because I'm not God. You still have to give me the power. So, and I don't mean just regular power. You're going to have to give me absolute sovereign dictatorship power so I can take care of this. Well, so the people gave that dictatorship power to Hitler, and that's what he wanted. Finally, and then all of a sudden everything quieted down and everybody was happy. Nobody realized that it was Hitler that was causing all the problems to start with. So today, we still have the same thing. There's all these riots and shootings and killings going on, and supposedly, some lone gunman did something, and now the government's got to come in. So I'm just saying, the more you change, the more we change, the more we stay the same. It's the same old trick. And I've been watching this, this is why the old-timers, the guys 70 and 80 years old sitting around the table, the teenagers would do well to sit and listen to the old-timers, the old guys sitting at the table at night talking about the world. Listen to the old guys who have been there, because so much of what's going on in the world today is nothing new. Nothing new at all. I saw this stuff when I was 15 years old, the stuff that's going on today. I understood how it worked back then, and I've been watching it ever since. And so it's a trick that's being played on the people, and it's a very interesting the way it works, but it works very well, because it's still working. People are still buying into all of this stuff that's going on and have no idea where it came from, and I've been, proselytizing that for years. Go back and look at where things come from.
Well, yeah, I couldn't really agree more, Jordan. And I just wanted to say as well, when you were commenting about having the young people sit down and listen to those that have the wisdom and that have experienced these things, because when I was young, I must have been about 10 to 12 years old, and my grandfather was in a hospital, and every time my grandma would go to visit, I would stay down below and I would hang out in the waiting area. And of course, there were retired people there that were just playing checkers or playing cards and just talking amongst themselves. And one time I was there, and I just ended up, they started talking to me, and I started listening to them and overhearing them. And they started talking about, the wars, and a lot of them had experienced, being in World War II. They were veterans, and they told me, and I was a kid, and they said, you can never forget what happened. You can never forget it, and you must always remember history so that it can never happen again. And, so I feel that definitely, and I think that's what might have first started with me, was wanting to go and seek out and learn about history and learn about where a lot of these things came from, because until I went and started doing the research myself, I hadn't any clue how to put all this together, and it's been a constant journey, as I'm sure it has been with you as well.
Of course it is. It's a continual. You never learn. You never stop learning. That's why I always say I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. I know how much I don't know, but I'm just fascinated by what I have found over the past 53 years of investigating where things come from. And classic example of the kind of stuff that's right in your face that people don't see is in Hollywood. Hollywood is just filled to the brim with occultism, mysticism. I mean, serious stuff. I mean, I put it on the same level as organized crime.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's incredible, the stuff that's going on behind the scenes in Hollywood. I mean, I know personally of two places in Los Angeles that people in law enforcement and in the industry have taken me to see these places where they're still doing human sacrifice, and in Hollywood. And wow. There's also like the movie that what was his name, Stanley Kubrick made. He was trying to tell the world something.
Was that Eyes Wide Shut? The one
that's
with
right.
Tom Cruise? Yeah.
Eyes Wide Shut. And Stanley Kubrick died because of making that movie. He was doing just fine till he made that movie, and he went and he was dead after making that movie. And a lot of stuff was taken out of that movie that he had in there. They pulled it out. But at least it got shown. At least even with all the important stuff taken out of it. But there's enough left in it that can tell that shows you where Stanley Kubrick was taking you. He was taking you to the dark side of the world we live in, where money and political power and the people who run the planet, who run the Hollywood, who run the banks, the people who run the government, the dark stuff with mask and sexual magic and rituals and secret societies, and people die with human sacrifices. I mean, all this stuff is real. But happily, most people know nothing about it. The only reason I know about it because I've lived here for 53 years in Hollywood. So I know this town. I know what they're doing. I know who these people are. And I know how it works because I was privy to learn all of this stuff a long, long time ago. I could tell you how I got into the backside of Hollywood another time. That's a whole story in itself. I started off when I first got here back in 1959. I was 19 years old. And I ended up right in the middle of running around Hollywood. Like I said, that's another story for another time. But I was able to go in and out of studios, meeting famous people, movie stars, recording stars, all the major people. I was meeting them because of a job that I got. I was very fortunate to have that sent me into the entertainment industry, and like a messenger and delivering stuff. So I used to deliver clothes to movie stars and go into the motion picture studios and CBS and NBC and go in the back lots and go and take costumes and clothing for their different shows that were going on and getting ready to go on. And so I learned a lot about Hollywood at a very young age. And I used to sit with Dino De Laurentiis many years ago. Dino De Laurentiis, very famous man, very famous producer and director. I sat in the back porch with Dino De Laurentiis in Studio City many years ago and sat and talked with him about motion pictures, religion, government. A very, very famous man. And
wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and others like him. I sat with other producers, directors. It was an extraordinary story of how I fell into this job and began to meet all kinds of people. And the more you listen, the more you learn, the more you watch. And I used to go to all the movie stars' homes, and that was really a trip in itself, seeing how these very famous people actually live in their home and the kind of people they are. It's very varied. Some of the movie stars were very, very sweet people, very nice. Others were very, haughty and arrogant. But some of them were really off the wall. They were really seriously evil. And so it's the world we live in, the world I've lived in.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, we got another break coming on, Jordan. We've got one more segment after this, so I want to wrap up with a few key points. So don't go anywhere, folks. We've got one more segment with Jordan Maxwell. You're listening to Truth Warrior, and we're right here on American Freedom Radio, so stay put. We're Back a little early once again, which is great because we got only one more segment here with Jordan Maxwell. And Jordan, I just wondered if maybe we could finish in these last maybe 20 minutes with your take on, I mean, we've talked about stuff going on the ground level here, on the ground crew, if you will, and how some of these different things work in government, business, banking, religion, etc. But ultimately, do you think that the buck stops there, or is there an element that is not even from this planet or this dimension or whatnot? I mean, what do you think about the whole subject of ETs and interdimensionals and all of that?
I am totally convinced because of what I've seen, what I have actually experienced myself, and what I've seen with my own eyes, that there is a world in existence of extraterrestrial ETs, spirit world. There's just a huge story to be told about that subject, about where did we come from, we humans, where did we come from? And when you want to talk about God and God created you, well, you better go back and look at that word and find out what you're talking about, because that's a whole subject, God and who created us. And I've been doing a lot of study on that for many years, and that's a very big subject, and I hate to get into it because so much needs to be said about it to lay the foundation. But if you go back to Genesis 1:1, it's mistranslated in the English. It says in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. But that's not exactly what it says. In Hebrew, the word God is E-L-L. And so if it was correctly translated, it would be in the beginning, El created the heavens and the earth. But that's not the word in the Hebrew. That's not what the original Hebrew says at all. It says actually in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Not El. El is God. Elohim is the plural. It's a plural on the word El. El is God. Elohim is plural. So therefore, the correct translation is in the beginning, the gods created the heavens and the earth. Elohim. And that would explain why when God is creating Adam and Eve, God said, no, the gods, more than one. But God says when he's creating Adam and Eve, come, let us make man in our image after our likeness. And so the Christians will say, see, there is God creating man. Well, I had a very famous rabbi I used to talk with back in the 60s, a very, very famous man at the time. And he's the one that brought that subject up to me some 50 years ago. He said, nowhere in the Bible, in the Old Testament, does it say that God created man. It doesn't say that. I mean, people believe God created man. It doesn't say that. Where does it say that God created man? Because it doesn't say that. It says, because the word man in Hebrew is ish, I-S-H. Jews will pronounce man as ish, I-S-H, or ishi. But in the Bible, it doesn't say, and God said, come, let us create ish. No, it doesn't say that. It says, come, let us create A-D-M, not Adam, A-D-M. We put an A in it and then call the man's name Adam. No, it's not Adam. It's Adam, A-D-M. And so it's not Ish. So God did not create Ish. God didn't create man. What happened was very simple. Somebody, whoever that we're talking about, the gods, God, Elohim, the God says, come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So it's not making man, we're going to make man in our image, after our likeness. And then after they did that, later on in the next scriptures, they said, now man has become as one of us, knowing good and evil. Man has now become one of us. And you've got to wonder, what are you talking about? Us. Let us make man in our image. And after they did that, well, now man has become as one of us. And so we're told that, God walked and talked with Adam in the cool of the evening. Well, the word in Hebrew, walked with Adam, because that's what the Bible says. God walked with Adam in the cool of the evening in Genesis. Well, the word walked with as a Hebrew word, which means to hear leaves or branches breaking under someone's feet as they walk. So if you're in the dark and the night in the woods and you hear something walking on leaves and crushing, you can hear the animal as it's walking. Well, that's what the Hebrew word means. So when it says God walked and talked with Adam, it actually is saying somebody was actually walking with Adam. And then in Genesis 18, go back to Genesis 18, when God and two angels approached Abraham, and it says Abraham went out of his tent and saw three men, and the scripture goes on to say that one of the three men was the Almighty God, the Creator, and he was being accompanied by two angels. Almighty God, the Creator. And go back and read Genesis 18, it says, and Abraham and his wife Sarah made dinner for God, and he sat down and had dinner with them under a tree. And so the angels and Almighty God sat and had dinner with Abraham. And then they got up and left. And it says that these were three men, but one of them was the Almighty God, the Creator. So all I'm saying is that God looks like us. No, we look like God. No, actually, we were hominid creatures a long time ago, millions of years ago. We were hominid creatures, and somebody came here, like the Bible says, and saw the indigenous creatures, the people, the animals that were here. We call them cavemen or Neanderthals or whatever these hominid creatures were thousands and thousands of years ago. And somebody came here and saw the indigenous creatures that were roaming the world and said to themselves, come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, so that man has become as one of us. So what I'm saying is very simple, that we are the test tube experiment of some race that we call the gods, the Elohim. Talk to the Jewish rabbi, talk to the rabbis, and they will tell you, yeah, that's exactly what the Bible actually says, is Elohim, the gods in the plural. And so,
And Jordan, just to ask a quick question there, would that also be in relation to what the Sumerian tablets that were uncovered by scholars like Zechariah Sitchin with the Anunnaki?
That's right. That's exactly right. I was in business with Zechariah Sitchin. I sent him to about 5-6 different countries, and I was in business with him. I was one of his books. I picked the cover for it, and I found the cover for it, and we sat and talked with this stuff for years about the Bible and the Hebrew words, and he was a great scholar. And so when you talk about God creating us and who God is, you better go back and do your homework. I don't think you got it yet. So it's a heck of a story.
Oh, most definitely. And I guess, what would you say? I mean, you've done so much research and you've spoken to so many brilliant people. And what would you say how it works in regards to sort of getting back to the whole banking, political, religious sort of power structures on the earth? I guess they're just representatives in one sense that are sort of managing things on, like, the way you go to like a Wendy's or a McDonald's or something, you have a manager on staff, but then of course there are the CEOs at the higher levels that make those big decisions. Is that kind of the situation that as you see it?
Yep, I think that's exactly right. The people who are running this planet themselves are not really in charge. They are, not at all. People who are running this planet themselves are nothing more than slaves to a higher power. And that higher power, I am totally convinced for myself, because of what I know and what I've been around, and all these years talking to people in military and churches and religion and government and mafia, and I've been in the company of underworld people and know how it works. I've been there. I've sat there and talked with them, and scientists and physicists and astronauts. I've been around the world. I've been talking to people for some 53 years. I know what's going on here, and there's an entire spiritual, for lack of a better term, preternatural. The word is preternatural, meaning not of this world. There is well, Christians call it satanic and devil worship and all that kind of thing. Well, I am totally convinced that there is a spiritual world that we don't see, that is very real, and you can communicate with it, and you can make business arrangements with it. And I've seen it happen. And motion picture studios and movies are made under spiritual direction. I mean, that's what Hollywood's all about. And there's a lot of satanic stuff, demonic, depravity, parties, sexual rituals going on in these parties. It's quite a story. As I said, there's still human sacrifice going on in Hollywood, around the Hollywood Hills.
Is that why they tell us through the movies, through symbolism? And I just came out of some of the newer movies that have been coming out, and man, they're changing, and they're being just blatant with bringing out these subject matters within the films themselves. You know, even Disney with this movie Tron and all of these weird, dark movies coming out now. It's just incredible.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. But it's all being orchestrated from the top. And it has to do with the demonic. And the demonic presence in the world is dominating the planet. The whole human world is being driven crazy by spirit forces in high places. And I've sat and talked with motion picture producers, directors, actors, some of the most important people in Hollywood. I know how they're doing it. I know what they're doing. I know what the writers are into. I know how they're doing this and what the symbols mean. And I'm shocked and beyond words about how devious and dark this whole system that we live under really is. If people understood what was going on in Hollywood, they would pass out. If you just knew how this system really works in Hollywood, you would not believe it. And it's right in your face. I mean, the symbols, emblems. I don't even know where to start with this stuff because it's such a big story.
Yeah.
But the very word Catholic. The word Catholic simply means universal. Therefore, air is Catholic, and water is Catholic, and people are Catholic. Anything that's universal and everywhere, the word for universal is Catholic. And so we have a Universal Studios. I remember many years ago, back in the early 60s, being told that the property on which Universal Studios sits was owned by the Vatican. We're talking 50, 60 years ago. That whole area that Universal sits on was owned by the Vatican. Well, the Vatican's Catholic, and Catholic is universal. Well, that's what they call it, Universal Studios.
Wow.
And we know that there's so much mafiosi and gangsters operating in Hollywood. In other words, it's a very, very big story about how Hollywood really works, about how the banks really work, how government really works, and nothing in this world works the way you think it does.
Well, Jordan, this has just been absolutely monumental, in terms of our conversation, and for me personally, to be able to hear from you and to have you on the show has just been an absolute honor. And we're just coming up to the end of our time there, but I would absolutely love at any time to have you back on the show, and we can maybe break down some of these things in more detail, maybe pick a subject.
Always do it.
Yeah, and just run with it. So just so you know, you are more than welcome at any time And I really, really enjoyed speaking with you tonight. And I just want to once again thank you for your time and for your energy and your effort over the years. I just want to let you know that, if you've impacted me personally, you've impacted so many people, and I just want to keep encouraging you to keep speaking your truth and keep putting that information out there. And I'm going to do my best to try to facilitate and put out the information to the best that I can as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Jordan. And folks, we're out of time tonight. And, please tune in again next week at the same time. Listen for another edition of Truth Warrior. It's been an honor, and we will speak again soon. So stay tuned, and thank you again for listening.